Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we just chat about seed starting. So let's go. The last video that I made just did a tour of all the seedlings that I have going on. And I had a lot of great questions, and I appreciate all the comments that I got from that video. And I wasn't going to make a video today. I was just going to do my regular process of potting up and fertilizing. But I thought I could address some of the questions that I had and even show you close up some of the things that I'm doing. One of the comments I had was, how do I find the time to manage all those seedlings? And that was a great question. Usually every morning when I come down with my glasses on and my pajamas, I have my first cup of coffee. I like to sit here and I like to just work on seedlings. It's kind of a nice mindless thing to do. I don't really have to think about much. And I feel like I'm tending to my little baby plants. And a lot of times, because this table is quite large, I'll also be watering or fertilizing my plants. And I can set up at least probably 5 of my 10 by 20 trays on here. And I can just get them going with fertilizing. And while they are soaking up their water, I can be doing some pricking of seedlings. I can be having my coffee, maybe watching a YouTube video. And it's just a nice time of morning. And then if it's one of the days that I'm not teaching, I usually will just dedicate it to doing more seedling maintenance. We still have about 8 weeks before our average last frost. And since we still have these cold temperatures, in fact, tomorrow I think we're supposed to be getting about 4 or 5 inches of snow, it's a great time for me to just keep working on my plants. And what I have here is just a tray of dahlia seedlings. We had planted these together. I had not pricked them out yet. So I figured it's a nice, easy, small project that I can tackle. And a lot of times that's what I try to do. I look at how much time do I have? I know I'm going out to dinner tonight, so I have maybe about 3 hours. So it's a good time for me to tackle this tray. And I know that there are seedlings in here that still have not germinated or emerged. And so I'm just going to tackle the seedlings that I can see, prick them out, and I'm putting them in these small little 6-cell packs. And I realize that they will grow pretty quickly and will need to be bumped up again. And due to the amount of space that I have for my grow light stands that are behind me, little 6-cell packs work out great. And as soon as these plants get too big, I will bump them up into something bigger. If you have someone that can help you with any part of this process, that is always a great thing. And one thing that my husband's been helping me with is filling up some of these 6-cell packs. He can't fill them all, but if he has a window of time, like on the weekends, I'll give him a 10 by 20 tray. I'll give him a whole bunch of these empty cell packs, and he'll fill a whole tray or 2 trays for me. And even if I don't get to that tray right away, at least I know that they're ready to go whenever I'm ready to work on them. So that's one way that I've been able to manage with my seedlings and keep up with them. I'm going to take you in for a closer look, and I'm just going to kind of show you what I'm working on here with my dahlia seedlings. These seedlings are in a seed starting mix, and it's basically a mixture of peat moss as well as vermiculite. I've changed the recipe up a few times, and so the recipe I'm using right now is 2 parts of peat moss to 1 part of vermiculite. And that's a nice fluffy base. And at this point, I'm bumping up these little seedlings into potting mix that I also made myself. And even though I've made a video showing you my recipe for my potting mix, right now the recipe that's been working for me is 7 parts of peat moss to 2 parts of perlite. And with each of these, I just add a small sprinkling of dolomite lime. The dahlia seedlings have quite a big root to them. So I'm making sure with my pen that the hole that I'm making here goes almost down to the bottom of the 6-cell pack. I am glad that I plant my seeds in containers like this because it just buys me time also. And what I found is most of my 6-cell packs then are generally all full rather than having just spotty germination. So you can see, again, quite a big root. You just have to be gentle and careful with your seedlings. You typically want to handle the seedlings by their leaves. You don't want to handle them by their stems. And when it comes to pricking out the seedlings right now, I'm only focused on the ones that are showing their green leaves and are out of the soil. There are a few here that really have not popped out of the soil, I'm going to leave them as is. And I like to gently just press down afterwards, just because I know that there are a bunch of seeds that are still under the soil here. The potting mix that's in this 6 cell pack was pre-moistened, but I can tell that it probably would benefit from a little bit more water. And since these leaves are only the initial first set of leaves, which are called the cotyledons, they will only get water. I will not be giving fertilizer at this time. I will give a very diluted version of fertilizer once the plants get their first set of what's called true leaves. And when it comes to my flowers, I like to use Miracle-Gro. It's cheap, it works, but you can use whatever fertilizer you want for your flowers. For my vegetable seedlings, I like to use fish emulsion, although it's a little bit stinky, so just be forewarned. When it comes to yard work, oftentimes I do the same type of thing. I look at a project and see, I basically want to set myself up for success and set realistic goals. So like when I'm working outside, I will look at how much time do I have to allocate outside and then think about what kind of project I want to do. I wouldn't want to take on a big, huge project if I only have a short window of time. And the same applies with the indoor seedling maintenance. I try to just see what kind of time I have and try to set a realistic goal. So if I only had, let's say, half hour today, this small tray here and doing what I'm doing would be a very realistic goal. And the other thing that I'm doing at this point is I am picking and choosing what I'm working on in terms of bumping seedlings up. Because I collect a lot of my own seeds, I tend to heavily scatter seeds in a tray. I don't always need all the little seedlings that emerge, but it's not a lot of money out because I collected my own seeds in most cases. So if I pick out a bunch of plants, for example, let's say right now I know I have a ton of impatiens. I must have at least 5 or 6 10 by 20 trays filled with impatiens, and each tray holds 62 plants. And yet I still have seedlings that still need to be pricked out in a restaurant to-go container. For right now, I'm not worried about those. I have to prioritize other plants like these dahlias. All right, well, so far we have these 2 6-cell packs. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to sterilize all my 6-cell packs. I need to start getting better at that. I want to start doing that in the springtime as soon as I start planting stuff and getting 6-cell packs or pots emptied out. I want to sterilize them right then and there. So right now, all I'm doing is I just do this, and it's to bang out any loose dirt that might be in here. And then over here, I have a tote. And in the tote is my potting mix that I already, actually, my husband made up for me. And that's the potting mix. I gave you the formula earlier of how I mix it up. And that's what's in here. What I did was I put boiling hot water in here. And then I took the spoon and I pressed down just to keep and seal in all the heat from that boiling hot water. I put this lid on it. You can see all the condensation. And I did that this morning because I knew I was going to go to school and I was going to teach a class. And so the soil needs to sit and cool down. So it might as well be cooling down when I'm not here. And when I come home, which is now, the soil has cooled down enough that I can now take from it and start potting up seedlings. So I'm constantly thinking about all of that. I'm trying to think about, what I can do to save time and things along those lines. So now what I'm going to do is just fill up a 6-cell pack, and I'm pressing down, but I'm not pressing down terribly hard, but hard enough. There's that fine line. If you press way too hard, it's not good for your plants and their roots. And if you don't press down hard enough, there are going to be air gaps and air pockets, and that's not good either. And before we start this, I'm just remembering, I had mentioned to you that these seemed a little bit dry. and you can see the difference in the soil. This looks darker, this looks a little lighter. Even though this water is dirty, it's still good. It's just regular water that I've been using for bottom watering plants. And there we go. I'm just going to put these 6 cell packs in there. This is just one of those little trays that you get when you buy like a toaster oven. I would love to hear from you and know how your season is going, if you are starting any seeds, and what are some issues that you're running into. Maybe I can help. Do you have any questions on bottom watering, on fertilizer, on potting up? So for me, when it comes to potting up, I do think about a lot of things. I think about the plant and how big the plant's going to get. I think about, how many times do I really want to pot up a plant? So when I started my wax begonias from seed, I knew that they grew very slowly. So I kept them in their restaurant to-go container for as long as possible. I did try to pot them up into little tiny little cell trays, much smaller than these. And I found that they were drying out way too fast. So I learned, and I need to remember this for next year, that I would rather keep the begonias, be it wax or tuberous, in a container like this for quite a long time, because then it's much easier to just keep them watered in this one tray. I have small little, I think they're, I'll have to measure them. I'm almost sure they're like 1 inch by 1 inch little pots. And I believe you use them if you have like violets or plants like that. And I bought them a few years ago, and to be honest with you, I used them, but then last year I definitely did not use them, and I wasn't sure what I could use them for. Well, I got thinking about my lavender plants that I started recently, and those also grow quite slowly. However, they're in a 6 cell pack, and I feel that some of them would benefit to be bumped up into something a little bigger. So I'm thinking that those little, they might be 2 inches by 2 inches. Again, I'll put it up on the screen. I'm thinking that the lavender would benefit to be in those pots. I don't want to bump things up right away into big, huge pots. It's usually not good for the plant. And it also just takes up unnecessary space. And I think most of us are in the same boat. We run out of space, and that's a problem. Even though I have 3 of these racks behind me, plus the Gardener Supply grow light system, I still run out of room. And so one of the things I have been doing the last few years is, I call it kicking them to the curb. I kick certain plants out. I still love them very much, but it's time to let them go. So I look at anything that's kind of like a cool weather crop, and that's the first one to be kicked to the curb. So right now, outside on my rolling cart, actually it's still in my garage, it's very cold today, but I have a bunch of plants. I have, let's see, I have spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, anemone, ranunculus, Brussels sprouts. I think that's it. So I have quite a few plants. Now, if I kept all those plants indoors under my grow lights, it would take up so much room. And I have other plants that are still in here that within the next probably few weeks can also be kicked to the curb. And alyssum would be one of them. They're still on the smallish side, but in another couple of weeks, they'll definitely put on good size. And I love to put alyssum in my container pots. Oh, pansies are also out on my cart. I kick those outside. So I want to make my window boxes and my hanging baskets, even if I don't hang them up and they're all ready to go, I want to pack them with alyssum and pansies. And by doing that, not only am I getting my container pots ready to go, I'm also freeing up and emptying 6 cell packs, and I'm making room both inside as well as out on my rolling cart. So it's all about just planning and freeing up space, maximizing space. That's something I'm always thinking about. because I still have a ton of flowers I want to start from seed as well as vegetables, mostly flowers at this point. I think a lot of the vegetables, I need to start my tomatoes, but other than tomatoes, most of my vegetables will be direct sown at this point. Sorry if I have my back to you. Now, some plants benefit from being in a nice 3-inch pot. And I learned a few years ago, I put like round pots in these 10 by 20 trays because they're so easy to get. You go to a store, you end up with a ton of those small, even if they're the 3-inch round pots. But what I found was when you put the 3-inch pots in a tray like this, you're not maximizing the space in the tray, which means you're not maximizing space under your lights and you're wasting space. And so I like the square pots, the 3-inch square pots, because they fit nice and snug in a tray like this. I also like they are also a 6-cell pack, but they're a deeper pocket to them and they're bigger than these. I like those as well. So basically, when you have these small little 6-cell packs and you put them in a tray like this, you end up with 72 plants. But then if you bump, let's say these plants up into the bigger size 6-cell pack, you end up with 36 plants in a tray like this. I'm always thinking about what's the next size that I'm going to bump up into. And optimally, it's going to be rectangular, square shape. I like to label everything that I'm planting, and I spent some time this winter and I took out a huge bag that I had that had all the tags from last year when I started my seeds. They were like in a huge gallon Ziploc bag. It was a big mess. And I just dumped them on the floor and I started making piles of all the different plants and organizing the piles. And then I basically put them in small little Ziploc bags, all the little tags by plant type. So like alyssum was in one bag, begonia was in one bag, peppers were in one bag. And then I stored them in my seed starting box alphabetically. So for example, these are dahlias. Instead of making a brand new tag, I'm going to pull from one of the tags I already created that was called dahlias. It might have a different variety name on there. I can just cross that out and put this variety on that tag. But I do like to reuse things whenever I can. So when it comes to the grow lights behind me, I do have 3 cats. And I don't know if any of you have cats, but cats like plants. Plants don't like cats. And I don't want my cats nibbling on the plants. I don't want my cats to get sick. And I don't want my plants to die. I will pretty soon, I haven't yet, pretty soon I will be utilizing the bottom shelves. And I've already thought about, well, what kind of plants will go in the bottom shelves? It has to be anything that's like the smallest size plants that I have. Something that's not very tall, that doesn't look very appetizing. So like alyssum will absolutely not go on the bottom shelves at this point because they are already too tall and big, and that would be like too appetizing for my cats. But something very short, like one of the smaller wax begonia seedlings that I have, those could go down there. Right now, my lobelia are very small, but I know that they grow fast. But right now, they're small. The lobelia could go down there. You always want to be thinking ahead and planning. Well, I think we did pretty good here. I still have dahlia seeds to start. I still haven't done them. But now I'm motivated to do them because I got all of these done. And speaking of which, that was another comment that I had was, oh no, I haven't started my seeds yet, or I started them too late, or I started them too early. And that's a very valid point. We all have been there. We all have done that. I still do that. When it comes to starting plants too early, you can usually fix that or rectify that with certain plants. So something like an alyssum or lobelia, bidens, verbena, there's like a number of plants, especially those ones that like to trail, just cut them back. You don't cut them back all the way to the base, but cut them back enough because if they're getting too big, I think last year or the year before last, I had them blooming inside. They were big and huge. And actually, by the time I brought them outside, they were not very happy. And I wished I had cut them back. So if that's why I started some plants a little bit later this year. Definitely, if you're in that boat though, you want to cut them back a little bit, just to kind of, if they're blooming and you still have, 8 weeks before your last frost, it's still too early. And when it comes to plants that are leggy, like some of my brassicas are a little bit on the leggy side. When you plant them in the ground or when you pot them up, just plant them deeper so that they are a little bit sturdier. Most plants will benefit from that. Here's one of the little bags I was talking about. So I just pulled it. It was, again, alphabetical in my seed box. And I looked under Z, and there's Dahlia. And even though it says Dahlia on this side of the tag, this side must have the date that I started it or sowed it last year. I'll cross that out, and I'm just going to put down the name of the Dahlia that we just potted up. And what will happen with this is, I know that a few little seedlings are still there, but for the most part, most of them have not germinated yet. I don't know how many are left to germinate, but I am just going to cover this back up, and then this can just go back under my lights. So right here, these were a bunch of coleus that we had started together, and I had a couple of different kinds. And the reason that the germination is so spotty is actually because I didn't have a lot of seeds. These were seeds that I collected. And so because I didn't have a ton of seeds, I figured I might as well just sprinkle them in here and let them do what they're going to do. I love collecting my own seeds. That's something I'm very passionate about. I really enjoy it. And it seems like a lot of you are enjoying that as well. When it comes to these 5-tier grow light systems, you see a lot of people are doing it now on the internet and making them themselves, which I think is fabulous. And that's actually how I got the idea, was by seeing other people doing it. And that's why I share it as well on my page, just to give all of you inspiration. But one thing that I had learned, I think it was last year, was that that top shelf of the 5-tier or 4-tier rack system is kind of a waste of space. It's a great place to store stuff, but since I have 3-tier systems here, grow light systems here, I don't need to waste space times 3. And then couple that with, I was running out of room for my plants. And I was looking at it and thinking to myself, well, what a waste of space. How nice would it be to utilize that space and grow plants up there? So I presented my problem to my husband. And because he's an engineer, his mind started thinking. He went down to our maker space in the basement, started tinkering with whatever free stuff we had in the house. And he was able to retrofit these grow light systems. And so I really am using that space now. I'm using it mostly for any plant that's either very tall or just very stocky and big, because once the plants get to be a size, like a nice size plant, they don't need to have that light directly right on top of them. So it's just, and actually we ended up doing the same exact type of retrofit to the Gardener Supply grow light system. So we're using that top shelf as well. So if you're running out of space, you might want to consider just trying to finagle something so that you can add a couple more sets of lights up there. It's so well worth it. Someone did ask me recently, where do I buy my seeds from? And years ago, when I first got into seed starting, I pretty much just bought this was before I got into like watching YouTube and seeing what other people are doing to buy their seeds. I was pretty much just buying my seeds from like Park Seed as well as Burpee. But then I really just got into collecting my own seeds. I'm too cheap. So, and I found that it works for me. So a majority of the seeds that I have and the flowers that I grow from seed are from seeds that I've collected myself. And that's why I started making a lot of videos last fall, just to teach other people how to, what to look for when when your plant is going to seed. What kind of seed pod are you looking for? Because you want to make sure that the seed pod is ripe. And then collect your seeds and how to store them and dry them. So most of my seeds are seeds that I've collected myself, but I did buy some seeds from Baker Creek, and I learned about Baker Creek through YouTube. And they do have a lot of very unique, very beautiful flowers as well as vegetables. So I've only bought from them, I think, once, but I do like their seeds. I've never bought from MI Gardener, but I know a lot of people have. The price is right for vegetables. I think it's mostly vegetables. I think there's some flowers, but it's mostly vegetables. So I don't do a ton of vegetable gardening. I do some for sure, but I don't do a ton. But if I wanted like some really unique, different varieties of vegetables, I think MI Gardener is a great place. And again, Rare Seeds, with rareseeds.com, which is Baker Creek. I've looked at Harris Seeds before, just on their website. They look like they have some really nice variety, but I'm pretty sure the prices were expensive. It might be because you have to buy like in bulk, like a ton of seeds. And I get nervous about that. I don't really like buying a ton of any kind of seed because, most seeds lose their viability as each year goes by, especially if they're pelleted. All right, well, we got one 6 cell pack done. So this is a coleus, and it's like, it just says green color. So it might be just like a full, maybe a lime green color coleus. I'm going to put that in some water just so we can soak up water from the bottom. Speaking of soaking water up from the bottom, a number of years ago, I never realized the importance of bottom watering. And again, thank goodness for the internet. Even though I've been gardening for 30 years, there's always room to learn. And I didn't know how important it was or why we need to bottom water our little seedlings. And I had started a whole bunch of snapdragons in a little restaurant to go container. And they all germinated. It was wonderful. It was great. I was loving life until I went to water them, and I didn't bottom water them. I watered them from the top. And it's not necessarily that the water pressure was too much for them, although I'm sure it was because snapdragon seeds are so tiny and seedlings are tiny. It was more so that within another day or two, I noticed that all the, not all, but like a bunch of the seedlings had fallen over, like, they just at the base. Basically, they had dampened off. And again, it wasn't the pressure of the water. I could tell it was something different because like half of it was fine, half of it wasn't fine. And then as the days were going on, it was spreading this way. It was awful. And I didn't know what happened. And now I know what happened. So that's why it's important to bottom water your seedlings. Once they get to be a fairly good sized plant, then you don't need to do the whole bottom watering business because it'll just take forever to bottom water a big, huge plant. But definitely for your little seedlings, you want to do that. Every so often, I'm pulling out a chunk of wood or whatever. It happens with even peat moss, and it's fine. I don't sift my peat moss, and generally, it's not an issue. So when it comes to like being organized, I try to make a habit of just kind of cleaning up my space so that it's a space that I enjoy, that I like to be in. I have a little dustpan right nearby. Actually, I have a little drawer system behind me, and it's back in that corner over there. It's one of those little plastic 3-drawer things. And in there is a bunch of stuff, including the dustpan, markers, duct tape for winter sewing, some scissors. So I have all my little tools that I need close by. I like these little 6 cell packs. They've worked for me. I originally invested and bought a ton off of Amazon, but then I've also asked family and pretty much anyone I know, if they do like to garden, like when they go shopping, if I can have their pots and their 6 cell packs. And I have them fairly well organized in my barn. And because I have a backyard plant nursery, people often ask me if I want my pots back or if I want any pots. And of course, I say yes. The key is just as soon as I get that load of pots to then sort them accordingly and put them away neatly in the barn. And then there is a nursery close by. I just learned about this last year, actually. A friend of mine told me, where there's like a bin and it's a recycling bin and people drop off their pots there. And I check that. Um, I drive right by it actually on my way back from school. And I check that bin, and that's where I'll find a lot of these 6 cell packs. I'll find a whole ton. A lot of times I found 3-inch pots. One time I even found a really pretty, just like a flower pot, like a ceramic flower pot. Um, so I know at this point what kind of pots I want and what kind I don't. I will still take the 3-inch circular pots because, those are fabulous for my backyard plant nursery for selling plants in. But yeah, if I can score 3-inch pots that fit in a container like this, that is great. And even when it comes to the 3-inch pots, I originally invested and bought some on Amazon, but I'm trying to do a lot less of that now that I know I can collect free pots from this nursery. And also Facebook Marketplace, is a great place to find a ton of stuff, including pots. So I can tell with these two here, this one I just put in here, this is light, and this one's pretty heavy. I like to give my plants a lot of water, like deep water, to start with. And then I really like to let my plants kind of almost dry out before I water them again. I've learned that the plants react better to that, like give them a nice deep watering and then just leave them alone. Um, as much as it would make my life easier to have a schedule, like on a certain day at a certain time to water and fertilize all my plants, it's not realistic. Um, there are plants that are all at different stages. Some are in these cell packs, some are in 3-inch pots, some are in bigger pots. So I really just check a whole tray and evaluate. Does that do the plants in that tray need water? Sometimes out of a whole tray, there might only be one little 6-cell pack that looks dry or feels light, and everything else is fine. I will just take that and dunk it into some water or water with a little fertilizer. So I really do try to evaluate each tray as needed and each pot as needed. Now I realize not everyone wants to pot up, and that is totally understandable. I mean, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie, it's definitely a lot of work. Um, so you have to do what's right for you, and you ultimately, the goal for my channel is I just want to get you into gardening and enjoy gardening. So you have to do, what you will enjoy and what you is feasible for you. And then there are, situations where you don't have the room to do any of this. And that's why I've made videos on winter sowing. And in fact, I will be winter sowing soon other plants because I have a whole ton of milk jugs that need to get filled up. I typically winter sow perennials. That's pretty much all I've ever tried. Mostly because I do a lot of my seed starting indoors. However, I do have plants that I don't want to invest the space inside, like calendula, like straw flower. And those are cool season plants. And I, based on my research, it sounds like they would do well with the winter sowing this time of year. So I will be doing that very soon because I do want to grow those plants. I just don't want to grow them inside. And then same with some vegetable plants. I know that it'd be nice to grow some vegetables using the winter sowing method. It would be good for me to try it, to learn it, because I've never done a lot with vegetables or annuals in the milk jugs, and for me to show you how easy it is and how I do with it. For right now, I'm okay with having the dahlias share this tray with these coleus, but I definitely do play the juggling act often this time of year, where, like I mentioned earlier, I'm moving trays around, the tall things go up on the top, and the shorter plants go near the bottom where the cats won't care so much about them. So something like these little coleus, these would be a great candidate for being in the bottom shelf. because they literally are so tiny. And I don't worry about them with my cats. Whereas these dahlias, the cats could easily get their little mouth right in there and start nibbling this plant. When it comes to these restaurant to-go containers, once you take the humidity dome or the clear plastic off, they absolutely dry out quicker, especially if you used seed starting mix. So it's very important to have holes in the bottom so that you can bottom water. And one lesson that I've learned this year is even though they have holes in the bottom, they need more holes in the bottom. So that's going to be another thing for me to do probably in the spring when I'm cleaning out my containers and sterilizing them, is making more holes in all my containers. And I know that it's been a problem this year because when I bottom water, I'll have pockets where it's nice and wet and then pockets where it's dry. And that's sad because I might have had plants that germinated and then all of a sudden they're not looking very good because they need water. And even though my container might have been sitting in a tray of water for like half hour, it still has like dry pockets in there, and it's because I didn't make enough holes. So I keep the tags in this type of container here, and these are all my seeds. I did make a video showing you how I organize my seeds, but basically all my flower seeds are here. They're alphabetical, but you could sort them by, you know, how many weeks before your last frost. Like maybe you have 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12. These are vegetables over here. Same thing, they're sorted alphabetically up to here. These are herbs, some just empty bags. Poppies. Oh, I'm not going to buy any more poppies. Lots of poppy seeds. Perennial sweet pea. I really wanted to start that. So there are a bunch of perennials in here, and I really only start my perennial seeds using the winter sowing method. I didn't get to every single perennial in here, and that's okay. I did a whole ton of winter sowing, so I am good. In bulk, I had bought years ago peas and green beans, and that's what's sorted in here. And I just put them in these little tiny bags, but they literally last forever. I mean, these, it says 2014 is when I bought these. Trust me, I planted them last year, and I swear every single one sprouted. In here, as well as here, these are where all my tags are. So like I have African daisy, azuratum. So they're all sorted alphabetically in here. All right, I'm going to put dahlia away in the D section. I used to throw these away every year and make them again, and that's such a pain. I'd rather like actually go through the effort and do it this way. And now I'm going to see if I have any coleus in here. Okay, I have a couple of coleus. One of them says coleus mix, and one says like dark brown, green eye. So I'm actually going to take out this one that says dark brown, green edge. I'm going to take that out, and I'm just going to cross out the dark brown. Then I just know it's a green colored one. Okay, so isn't that the cutest little pot ever? It has drainage holes in it. I was looking at the bottom of it, and it's basically a 2 by 2 inch pot. I'm pretty sure that you usually would get these like if you had violets. Anyway, I bought a ton of them a while ago, and that's what I'm going to pot up my lavender in, and I'll show you my process for that. And I know I did a seedling tour recently, but I'm so excited. I think the lavender looks great, and I just want to give it the best chance of survival. This morning, I was also looking at my delphiniums. You know, I had made a video showing you my process of cold stratifying them. And then I had taken the seeds after they were cold stratified. And some of them, I took them out of the Ziploc bag and put the seeds in the potting mix. And then other ones I just kept in the Ziploc bag. So if I was to do it all over again, at this point, I would say that it's better to take them out of the Ziploc bag and put them in potting mix. You don't necessarily have to put them right in a 6-cell pack, but at least get them out of the baggie and put them into a tray with potting mix, or put them in a cell pack. Because I feel like the ones that were in the Ziploc bag, I don't know, I think that they would have been better to be in dirt. So I gave it some time. I really thought about it. Which process do I like better? And I would say after cold stratifying them, get them into some dirt. So that has a really nice root system to it, and that's very exciting. And I can already smell the lavender, which is so awesome. These probably would have been fine still staying in their 6 cell pack, but I want them to be healthy. I want them to be strong. I want them to grow faster. If I remember correctly, when I researched it, it said that you really, especially where I live here in zone 5B, our temperatures can get down to, like, I think it's negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit during the winter months. I want to make sure that I give them enough time to establish themselves so that they are good to go for next winter. So it's to my benefit to make sure I have a nice sturdy plant that I can put outside during the summer. I want to do it in the summer. I think I'd read you should do it either in the spring or the summer in these cold climates like where I live. So I don't think I want to bring them out in the spring. I think I'd rather wait until the summer, but we'll have to wait and see what they look like a month from now. But I'm not in a rush to get them out in the ground until they've put on some good size. Now, what's nice about doing something like this is I'm hopefully giving this plant a better chance by being in its own big pot, but yet it's not a terribly huge pot because I don't want to use that much space under my lights. But then I'm freeing up my 6 cell packs because you get to a point where you run out of them. There's a couple of reasons why you want to be really good about cleaning your pots, even though I started off the season on a strong note, but I admit I just have too many pots to clean now that I'm behind the 8 ball on that. But I won't be next year. That's my goal. In case there was a plant growing in there that had some sort of disease or issue, you might carry it then onto your new seedlings. So it's good to clean your pots out, not just actually rinse them with water, but clean them out with, there's a couple of different formulas of stuff you can use out there. I used bleach, but I know some people don't like to. So you can use whatever it is that you're comfortable with, like maybe it's apple vinegar cider. I think there's other options too. So fingers crossed, these pots are nice and clean. But that's why I'm trying to, at a minimum, just dump out the loose dirt. That's not going to ensure their safety, but it should help a little bit. So on the screen right now, I'm just putting up basically, a 10 by 20 tray, and it's 10 by 20 because one side of it is 10 inches and one side is 20 inches. And you can see that how many of the 6 cell packs I can fit in a tray like that. But then in that same size tray, you can see how many of a larger size 6 cell pack I can fit in that size tray. And then you can see like the 2-inch pots and how many can fit in a tray. And then how many 3-inch pots can fit in a tray. And notice the shape, that they're either rectangular or square shaped pots. And that way it gives you an idea of what you're working with when it comes to space and managing that space. When it comes to the lights, I have them come on every day at 5 a.m. and they go off at 9 p.m. So they're on for 16 hours total. And I have them all set up on a timer. My lights are LED shop lights, and those are perfectly fine. You don't need to go out and buy any specific lights that say that they're a grow light. Those tend to be more expensive, and you don't need to get those. If when a LED shop light is just as sufficient. I used to think that the LED shop light was only good for growing little seedlings to a certain size, and that you can't actually have anything flower inside. But that's not true. I've had plants flower inside. I've had micro tomatoes create tomatoes inside during the winter months. So they're actually perfect. And you can usually buy a like a 4-foot, 3-foot or 4-foot LED shop light for somewhere in the ballpark of like $20, which isn't bad. And when it comes to, all the numbers that are out there, the one thing that I look at is the lumens, and you want it to be at least about 5,000 lumens. You want nice, strong seedlings. You want that light, like just barely above your seedlings. That's very important because if the lights are way off of your seedlings like that, you're going to end up with very leggy seedlings. And even though you can fix or correct leggy seedlings, it's a lot of work if you have a whole tray or 2 or 3 trays of leggy seedlings. So it's nice to just in the very beginning, keep your seedlings strong when possible. A lot of times this time of year, you might start noticing the little flying insects in your house. And I'm not talking the fruit flies. I'm talking the fungus gnats. I had a really bad issue last year with fungus gnats. And I think I brought them in when I brought in my dahlia tubers. They were stored in my garage. But it's hard to tell where they came from. It just seems that that's when I started noticing the problem. I did use, I tried to do whatever I could. I got those sticky traps and I bought mosquito bits. And every time I watered my plants bottom watered my plants, I had put the mosquito bits in the watering can and let it sit there for, I forget what it was, a half hour or whatever it's supposed to be. But once it gets out of control, it's very hard to get rid of all those fungus gnats. You can see that this little tiny lavender will be happy in its new home. Okay, so we're going to pot up some delphinium next. Check out the roots, pretty insane. I could easily just start planting more seeds, but there is a time where I want to get caught up first. So I think my goal for this weekend will be to get caught up on potting up seedlings, fertilizing, and then looking at my spreadsheet and figuring out my plan of attack. Like, what is next? What else do I want to grow next? Because this is a busy time. I'm at 8 weeks before my last average frost date. And I know like tomatoes need to be started now, but there's so many flowers as well. So I just need to take a step back and reevaluate, like, what's next. It's always important, like when you're potting up, like how I am right now, I'm making sure that I'm being very gentle. I'm holding the plant by its leaf. That way, if for whatever reason, if this leaf right here broke off, there's still other leaves down below. But I don't want to hold it by its stem because if I snap the stem, then the plant's dead. And I want to make sure that I'm pushing down enough so that the roots are under, but also I want to make sure that the base part is not underneath that, like I don't want to have it rot at the crown. I think that's all I'm going to share for today. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I know it's a little different or quite a bit different than my normal format, but I just wanted to show you what I was doing, what I'm up to, and hopefully I answered some of your questions that you might have when it comes to space under the lights and running out of space, because we all feel that way. I am starting to feel that way. This is definitely a time of year when we start feeling a little bit stressed, a little bit overwhelmed. Like, what did we just take on? But I think we're all in the same boat. We're all in it together. So if you have any questions, as always, drop them below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.